let's get into who we think is going to be in the top three in the Tour de France this year then. Who's going to be first up to the plate? Amy.
It's really hard to look beyond I think so, beyond Podge and Rog, and then of course I guess Carapaz. I mean, Ineos have won 6 stage races this season. Is it every single one they've started? I don't know that stat, but I know that they've won 6, which why not for a 7th, but yeah.
Carapaz, I mean, that's an interesting call. Like, I suppose another question is which Ineos rider is going to be the leader out of maybe the 4 they've taken. I thought like Geraint was still the main man, but if he won the Tour, he'd be the second oldest in history.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason I didn't really say him. Just because, yeah, his recent track record, I guess, is not as good as it's been. Although, I mean, he could go well in the time trials. They could be good for him. So who knows?
Yeah, I feel like Geraint Thomas is their strongest time trialist, the Ineos Grenadiers, but they have 4 options for me in the GC, which no other team possess close to that. A lot of teams have 1 strong leader, maybe 2, but with Carapaz, Thomas, Port, and Teo, you can't rule out. I mean, everyone did it at the beginning of the Giro last year, and we know how that ended. So I feel like they're going to race quite offensively, quite different to how we've seen Ineos race in the past at the Tour de France, and I feel like they have to do that to try and beat Pogačar and Roglic. I'm not sure who's going to be their leader. I feel like any of those 4 riders at some opportunity could get the chance to try and attack and really put the Slovenians under pressure.
You're both hedging your bets at the moment, so I'm going to ask that question. Who's going to win the race? Which Slovenian, maybe?
For me, I will go for Primoz. I'm going to go for Primoz Roglic to win the Tour. I think it's got to be his time now. He's got the experience. He's been there. He's been so close to winning it. And I feel like it's his time to win the Tour de France. I've got Roglic winning. I'll go for Carapaz seconds on the podium for Ineos. And I'll have Pogačar down in thirds, a lowly 3rd place for Tadej.
Amy, which Slovenian or which rider for you?
Well, I was also going to say Roglic, but in the interest of being different, I'll say Pogačar.
There's nothing to suggest that he's any weaker than last year. Like, if anything, the team around him is stronger. So I've just done a massive deep dive into his life and times for Rouleur, for the latest issue of Rouleur, which I should grab, but it's in the other room. Very unprofessional of me. Normally, it's a difficult second album for a Tour de France first-time winner. It doesn't look like being the case for him this time round. They've got Mark Hirschi. He's got stronger teammates. He's a favourite, and he should be. And I think Miguel Angel Lopez will be third. That he was third up to the ultimate day, kind of last year. That I think a lot of people kind of forget. He had a terrible time trial, but he was, one of the best riders in the mountains when it mattered. On the other hand, he's a Movistar rider, and Movistar kind of have a habit. It's fun to make fun, but if things came together, they almost have the same tactic as Ineos Grenadiers, don't they? They have 3 or 4 strong climbers. They've got Marc Soler, Enric Mas, 80-year-old Alejandro Valverde. I would like to see them be a force, but I just don't see it. Like, I still see them having someone in 7th, 5th, maybe winning the King of the Mountains, that kind of thing. Definitely winning the team classification.
Yeah, I think they'll win the team classification. That's the one certainty I have ahead of this Tour de France. They always seem to go for that, if nothing else. But I do feel that Movistar are stronger than last year with Lopez, definitely. Like you say, Andy, he was one of the best climbers purely at the Tour de France last year. I think the 60 kilometres of time trialling could put him in trouble in the GC, particularly when it comes to challenging for the very top spots. But yeah, I feel like they're definitely stronger with him. And Valverde as well. He seems to have kind of refound his old form a little this year as well. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
What about outside contenders like Julian Alaphilippe or anyone else you might think of as challenging for the podium? Joe, one of you?
Okay. I feel like there's quite a few kind of GC leaders here who could really put in a strong performance out of nowhere. One of them, I think, Lucas Hamilton of Bike Exchange. I think he'll be leading them over Simon Yates. I think Yates has said he'll be hunting stages. So I think Lucas Hamilton could be, I think he could be in for a top 10. Anything more would be superb. So I think Hamilton could be a rider to watch. Also, perhaps Ben O'Connor of AG2R. He's had a pretty consistent year after, he was struggling to find his team at one point last season after he won that stage at the Giro. I think he could, a top 10 again would be really good result for him. And then perhaps maybe I'm looking at David Gaudu of Groupama FDJ without Thibaut Pinot, I think for the first time in 10 years, of Groupama FDJ at the Tour de France. And yeah, Gaudu's another who will lose time in the time trials and quite a lot of it as well. But I feel like he is really developing into one of the strongest climbers in the world. If we look at, I think it was the Azulia Basque Country Tour, he was up there only with Roglic on the Queen stage of that race. So I think Gaudu could be one to watch, but a podium, I feel like it's going to be too much for him with the 60 kilometers of time trialing.
Yeah, the French, it threatens to be a slightly fallow year for them. Like personally, I don't see Alaphilippe threatening for the yellow jersey, but he may take it on the first day, or he may win one of the first stages, which is perfect for him. But he hasn't. He just hasn't got it to win the race, certainly. So they've been waiting for Gaudu to use maybe Cotton Kirbyism there for years, and it is about time that he comes through. And they really need it. Like without Pinot and Bardet, who are aging anyway, frankly. I've written down Wilco Calderman because, fun fact, he's not been out of the top 10 of a stage race since the Tour de Suisse 2 years ago. I could see him, even just sneaking into the top 5 if everything goes to plan.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout. I think he's one who can time trial too, so I don't feel like a podium could be completely off the cards for him. I think Calderman, he's got Bookman, I think, to support him after Bookman had to drop out of the Giro as well. And he's, a really strong climber too. So I think with him helping out Calderman, Bora could have a really good race. And one other rider we haven't mentioned is Nairo Quintana. What can we expect from him? I mean, he was the pretender at the Tour for, he was so close to Froome when he was winning it with Ineos. He hasn't seemed to have found that Grand Tour winning form at a Grand Tour over the last few years, but I don't think you can ever completely rule him out, in my opinion, anyway.
It's kind of that bloke who walks into a pub and says, "Does anyone want to fight?" And sometimes 3 taller men stand up and he backs down, but sometimes, he wins a fight. Is my backhanded analogy for that. But yeah, it's definitely never boring when Nairo's in the mountains. Let's talk about bunch sprints and the points jersey, and let's talk about the big news. On the day we're filming, Mark Cavendish is going to the Tour de France, pretty much replacing Sam Bennett, who has a knee injury and hasn't been able to recover in time. Let's just get into that. What do we think Mark Cavendish is going to do in this race? Amy?
I mean, he's been closer to his usual self this season than we've seen. So, but I think it's also easy to overstate what he might be capable of. But I mean, it'd be great to see him take some stages, especially considering I think there's quite a few finishes where he's won before this year. Yeah, I just think as a fan, it's great to see him back at this race and with the potential to take some more, add to his, is it 30 stage wins? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be just amazing to see him back there. I think 3 years since he was at the Tour de France or any Grand Tour. And just a few months ago, he looked so far away from being, Deceuninick Quickstep's lead sprinter at the Tour de France. So just to see him there firstly is going to be awesome. And I think if he can win a stage, if he can win a single stage, that'll be a huge success, massive success. And I think that'll be his goal, to be honest.
Yeah, like it's so funny how the wheel turns. Like I remember when I was like a young journalist eligible for the White Riders jersey myself in 2010, and nobody thought it was awesome Mark Cavendish being at the Tour, frankly. Like for journalists, his dominance was getting boring. For fans, the same thing. I think he was perceived to be a bit chippy and even arrogant in some quarters. And that whole perception has just completely changed over the last few years, especially in the last year. Like everyone's rooting for him. And that would be really a fairy tale stage win, wouldn't it? Same for someone like Andre Greipel, but I feel like that's less realistic. Cavendish is at least possible, but you have to say unlikely looking at the way he's gone this year.
I don't know. I feel he did win a stage at the Belgium Tour recently, and he did beat Merlier and Caleb Ewan in that stage as well. He's come close as well to Merlier recently in a few other Belgian races, albeit just behind him. And he's going to have to beat those guys. Obviously, Caleb Ewan, Merlier, Wout van Aert even in the mass sprints. He's going to have to beat the best to win because I don't see him getting to any kind of reduced mass sprints over some big climbs either. So he is going to have to beat those best sprinters in the world. And yeah, I feel like if he's got a chance of doing it, it's now in his career, because he does seem to have hit some good form, really good form as of late, particularly compared to what he's done earlier in his spell with Bahrain last season as well. He was struggling just to get to the finish of stages at the front of the race. So to see him now really competing against the best sprinters is just great.
And of course, the green jersey competition is even wider open now that the defending champion Bennett is on going to the Tour. Who do we see as the main challengers there?
Shall I go?
Go for it.
So I think without Bennett, Peter Sagan, he's won, I think, 7 of these green jerseys, so he's pretty good at it. But I feel like Wout van Aert as well, I think he's a better climber than Sagan. I think that's fair to say. And he clearly can sprint very well too. The issue with Wout van Aert is he going to be given the freedom to go for that jersey with Roglic in the team? Another rider I think could maybe challenge Mathieu van der Poel. Is he going to finish the race though? And is he really going to go for it as well? Because remember, he has Merlier and Philipsen in his own team. So will he be sprinting in the pure flat stages as well? That could really hurt his chances. So for me, Sagan, Van Aert and Van der Poel are probably the 3 big favourites for green.
I mentioned Caleb Ewan there. So you think he's not going to... So is he going to do a Giro and just pull out like after 8 days, after winning a few stages?
I'm not going to say he's definitely going to do that, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if he did withdraw before reaching Paris.
Yeah, I would have said Ewan, but for the same reason, I guess, he still wants to win a stage of every Grand Tour, and he's, is he going to the Olympics?
I doubt it, because it's quite hilly, isn't it?
So, he'll want to I don't know, I guess it's not as close between the Tour and the Giro as the Tour and the Vuelta, but I just can't see him finishing.
You know what? I can really see him winning 3 or 4 stages in the first 7 days, and if he's got the points jersey on his back and he's going well, he's not going to pull out the Tour de France. If there's a chance of winning it, even though he probably won't be going for the intermediate sprints, if there's a chance of capping it off in Paris with a 4th or 5th stage win and dominating the sprints, which I think he's getting to that point where he could. I just don't put Colbrelli in the same category. And Demar is better than ever, maybe, but we'll probably take one or probably one stage win off his plate. I think he'll finish it because it's a Tour. The Tour is a Tour, as a rider like to say. So
that's true, and I guess. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
I was
It's
going to
fine.
say that's true. I guess like the Giro doesn't have the carrot for the sprinters of the Champs-Élysées that the Tour has. So yeah. Now having just said I can't see him finishing, maybe I can.
Let's rattle through the King of the Mountains and young riders and their classification to look out for. King of the Mountains is always a bit of a shot in the dark, isn't it? Like partly dictated by how the race goes. For sometimes fancy contenders like lose 15 minutes early on and switch their focus. Which names have you guys got down for that, Joe?
For me, I think, Pogacar won it last year, also to combine with the yellow jersey. And I think Bernal, when he won in 2019, he was second. So it seems the winner of the Tour often almost accumulates enough points to win the jersey. So we could have the winner taking it. But I think Mike Woods of Israel Startup Nation, he's climbed better than ever this year on the longer climbs, I think. And he's always been a really good puncher, really strong attacks and good acceleration as well. So I don't think Mike Wood should go for the GC because he's going to lose a lot of time in the 60 kilometers of time trialing. So a podium, I don't really see him getting close. So for me, I feel like he should really go all out for either stages or the KOM jersey. And I definitely feel like he's got the skills to do it.
You raise a very good point there. Really about, the past two Tour champions either winning or being very close to winning the King of the Mountains. Amy, frankly, do you particularly care about the King of the Mountains? And, should they change it? Like, has it lost prestige, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like couldn't choose who I thought was gonna win it. I was like, I might as well just close my eyes and point to the start list because but like Joe just raised a good point that the winner of the whole race has usually ended up with it in the last few years, and I think that's been the case with a lot of stage races too, where the winner of the GC just hoovers up all the jerseys too. I don't know if it's lost prestige. I guess, I don't know. I guess it depends. Like normally it would be someone who's like always getting themselves in the breakaway from like a Pro Conti team, right? Trying to clean up the points. So I guess it seems like they need to maybe more incentivize riders to do that because it also makes the racing more interesting. Whereas, if the main GC contenders are the ones just taking the points, then it takes away another competition that makes the race more exciting to watch, I guess. That's the thing. Yeah,
that's a good point. Like Carapaz would have been nice if he'd won it last year, but I think Pogacar nicked it on literally the last mountain of the Tour. I've got names like Mark Soler, Simon Yates, Esteban Chavez. I think Green Edge are kind of coming to this race with a stage hunting team. Quintana will be a popular winner, probably very deserving too. Pierre Rolland would be, be very popular in France with the housewives after a long, quite a kind of long absence from the Tour podium. And as for the Tour de France, the young riders jersey, you'd think Pogacar has that in the bag, but David Gaudu is also eligible. So is Lucas Hamilton. Which other young riders who are under 26 do we think will be making waves and coming through at this race, either with stage wins or impressing on the front?
So not really white jersey candidates, but I think Edith Schelling of Bora Hansgrohe, he's at, I think, his first Tour de France, and he's been really impressive in numerous one-day races this year. I think it was Brabantse-Pijl. He was fourth, I think, just behind Van Aert and Pidcock, and he was really, really strong there. And I think he's really versatile as well. So I think we'll see him on lots of terrain. Stephan Bisega, another rider, I think making his Grand Tour debut at the Tour de France. I believe he is going. I don't think EF have officially announced their team, but he's a really, really strong time trialist and a pretty good sprinter as well. And then maybe Alex Aramburu of Astana, who, he's a Spanish rider again, I think in his first Tour. Really strong puncher, but also a very quick finisher as well. So if he's in the breakaway, other riders are definitely going to need to drop him because he's a very good sprinter, like I say, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him win a stage.
one more talking point that's the opposite of that, though I wanted to kind of touch on, is the return of Chris Froome to the race. What is a 4-time winner going to do? Amy, do you think?
Not much.
Very cutting, but probably true.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done much this season, so how can we expect him to do much? It's just kind of, yeah, it's an interesting choice to take him, I think.
Yeah, I think when he signed for Israel, I'm sure there would have been some agreement that he rides the Tour. But now, obviously, he's not gonna challenge for the GC based on his current level. So I think he's going to ride as kind of a road captain, and yeah, just kind of be back at the Tour de France, which in a way is a success for him when you think of how severe his injuries were. But yeah, I can't see him getting close to being a GC contender here.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to see him up the road in a breakaway. If the opportunity is there. Some people can be a little bit, I think, dismissive and even cruel on social media when it comes to Chris Froome. But when you see the injuries that he had, like just turning up to the start in Brest is a great thing for him.
Yeah.
And, it could lead to something, because this is still part of his rehabilitation. He could be stronger next year, but you've got to say he's into his late 30s now. So you'd think that he's not going to win another Grand Tour, surely.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it's another stepping stone in that recovery, and maybe next year or even the Vuelta next year, maybe he can re-find at least some of that level which saw him win 4 Tour de France's.
I feel like I was really harsh now.
No, it's fair enough.
Chris,
I mean,
I know you watch this religiously.
Yeah, maybe we'll be firing like Chris Froome up for a top 10 finish, or Mark Cavendish, who does basically get motivated by proving doubters wrong. So me saying it's unlikely that he'll win will just be fuel to his engine. We'll touch briefly on the route before going onto the opening day in La Course, but as I was saying before recording, there's no point going over all 3 weeks for people who have pro cycling stats and Tour de France preview mags to hand. But yeah, we're starting in the northwest corner of France, in Brittany, the cycling hotbed in Brest, with 2 hilly stages. The first one finishes in Londoneux on the Côte de la Fosse aux Loups, and it's also where La Course will be finishing, which barely has a meter of flat in that route for the women. The men's route is a bit more boring, frankly, but it's still up and down. And then it's the header of the Mur de Bretagne, which it's a great climb. Very straight, very steep, probably the most famous in Brittany. Both these stages are designed quite unashamedly, I think, for Julian Alaphilippe. Mathieu van der Poel could be up there. Then for the rest of the first week, it really settles into kind of what I would class as a very traditional Tour de France opening week. Flattish stages, like eventually heading east into the Alps. Could be, I can already hear people on social media saying very boring by about stage 6 and starting to complain about it, but should be some interesting bunch sprints. La Course, let's get into that. Who do you think's going to win at the weekend? It's this weekend after all.
I feel like that's going to me, right? Yeah. Well, the start list last time I checked it, which admittedly was a few days ago now, was quite sparse. There wasn't a whole lot of information as to who was actually going to be there. Annemiek van Vleuten's already said she's not racing. So she's not going to win. But then when she's not there, it's difficult to look beyond Anna van der Breggen, who just won herself the time trial title, the Dutch time trial title. Otherwise, Sorry, I'm literally like, I had not looked at the start list because it wasn't updated.
Well, that in itself is kind of, underlines the afterthought nature maybe of this race. So we know there's going to be a Women's Tour de France next year sponsored by Zwift, and that's great. But, one of the world's top riders, Van Vleuten, is just skipping this race. And the Giro, yes, it's just a bit of a shame there's not more news, there's not more buzz about it, When you put La Course on the same day as a men's opening stage, it is difficult to garner that same attention. I'm not saying it's fair or right, but...
Well, also, can't forget that it was actually taking place on the second stage of the men's race, but there's some highly important local elections in the area that mean that the women's race must be moved a day earlier, but the men's race stays intact. So I think that tells us everything we need to know. And it's not even a hot take to say that it's like a token race and that it's been like so much more could have been done with it, and it's just kind of floated around and been put on the back burner, and it's a bit of an afterthought. And like I say, that's, I think, what everyone thinks of it. So yeah, looking forward to the actual Tour de France fun with Zwift to see if it actually pans out to be a proper race with proper climbs that does justice to the women's peloton. So
with a proper start list who are targeting it. Like, there'll be so many going for the women's Giro, which starts, we're thinking about a week.
Yeah, just over a week. It's on 2nd of July.
That'll be interesting. But yeah, I think Demi Vollering could also offer something like on this route. Anything else to add? Like any random thoughts or... Also, I put down... So I'm pleased to see that Nicholas... Let's do that again. Oh, I'm not sure I can say his name.
Dlamini, is that the one?
Yeah. So I'm pleased to see that Nicholas Dlamini has been picked for Quebec at Assos. Especially, he's had a really rough 2 years. I think it was last winter that there was a very nasty video that showed him being arrested or manhandled anyway by park rangers and having his arm broken in South Africa. He's a really valuable kind of domestique for them, but it's a big thing. I think he's the first Black South African rider, and I'm really intrigued to see how he goes. We featured him in Rouleur 4 or 5 years ago. I think our man Ian went, and he was showing around the township where he's from. It's just nice to see what cycling can do. Like, it really can change lives. That in a peloton that's mainly white, affluent, middle class, that got everything handed to, well, not handed to them, but many of them did, frankly. This is really a kind of a great thing that should be happening more, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I saw on social media as well, he was kind of saying how proud he is to represent Quebecer, who obviously distribute bikes around Africa, sponsoring the team now. And so it's great to see that project continuing to flourish, really, especially when we, again, looking back to the end of last year, they were struggling to remain in pro cycling in the peloton, and Quebecer stepped up to be the main sponsor. So now to see, like say, a Black South African rider at the Tour de France for Quebecer, it's all brilliant stuff.
Yep, I agree. Don't have anything to add to that.
Well, I think we've picked through everything and we've named about half the peloton. So, and yet we'll still probably be wrong with many of our predictions, and you can find out probably on the first rest day when I think we'll be back for the next debrief. But if you like what you saw, you can buy our Tour de France issue on rouleur.cc or like and subscribe below. Thanks for joining us. See you soon. Bye.